for a power wheelchair. Now, the eligibility for a power wheelchair, no matter what sort of seating system is on the chair, the base power chair eligibility is always the same. The patient has an MRADL they are unable to accomplish because of their mobility limitation. They're unable to get from their bedroom to their kitchen for meals, to their bathroom for grooming hygiene. Whichever ADL we identified, the patient requires a mobility device. They are unable to use a cane or walker. They're unable to use a standard manual wheelchair. They're unable to use a scooter. They therefore require a motorized wheelchair. That is the justification for a motorized wheelchair. The patient has an ADL. Now we'll go through exactly how do we eliminate a manual wheelchair, how do we eliminate a scooter, a cane, and as we go through our justification and explain that sort of process, we get a better idea of why a patient would or would not be able to use a cane or walker or a manual wheelchair. It is important to note, just say cane walker not appropriate, manual wheelchair not appropriate, scooter not appropriate. We need to write why it's not appropriate. So as we're eliminating the less expensive equipment, cane and walker, is the patient at fall risk? Are they ambulatory at all? Are they weight bearing? Can they initiate gait? These are things you want to think about when we're talking about a cane or walker. How many steps can they take, etc. Wheelchair. Can the patient propel at all? How far can the patient propel when trialed? We always want to write what happened when trialed. A patient needs to trial a manual wheelchair prior to recommending a motorized wheelchair. Sometimes you have a patient, this is also very important, sometimes you'll have a patient that can physically self-propel a manual wheelchair. However, like we have the tug test, time up and go for ambulation, it's not considered a functional level of mobility. Meaning if you're a patient, if they try and it takes them 20 minutes to get from down their hallway, from their bed to their bathroom, but they're not going to be using that wheelchair to go to the bathroom because it's too much on them and it's too taxing and it takes too long, that by the time they're halfway down the hallway, they're going to have an accident. That is not considered functional mobility. We need to discuss functional, safe mobility. Is the patient able to self-propel a manual wheelchair? Why not? What's the diagnosis and limitation causing that? Unable to self-propel a manual wheelchair, let's look at a scooter. Is the patient able to navigate their home in a scooter? Is the patient able to safely transfer on and off a scooter? Now, the transfers for a scooter, it is much easier to transfer on and off a scooter. When it comes to eliminating a scooter, there are three basic reasons why you'd say the scooter is not appropriate. Either the patient does not have the proper trunk control. A scooter does not offer adequate posture control. It's designed for somebody who has a good core strength, somebody who has COPD or CHF. They're unable to walk down a long hallway. They require a scooter to get them there. But if anybody requires any sort of posture and positioning, any sort of poor trunk control, the scooter is not going to offer them that sort of posture support. The patient requires to use two hands. You have a patient who is a hemiplegia, or they have limited range of motion, they can't get their hands out on that scooter, it's not safe. They can't operate that tiller properly. A scooter is like you see in Walmart. You should have seen on the our previous slides. A scooter basically is a seat on a board with a tiller. You need to control the tiller with both hands to turn. A patient has to have the strength and the ability to transfer safely on and off a scooter. So you have the inability to maintain their posture on a scooter, inability to safely transfer on and off a scooter. It's harder to transfer on and off a scooter than it is to transfer on and off a power wheelchair, because the motorized wheelchair, you're going to have a seat. The patient can just stand, pivot, and sit down. Whereas the scooter, they have to come over the board and be able to reach out to the tiller. So the transfer on a scooter is more cumbersome than the transfer onto a motorized wheelchair. That is something you want to think about when recommending a scooter or going to a motorized wheelchair. The third thing is the inability to navigate the home. Again, because all the insurances are providing equipment for in-home use, primarily for in-home use, and the necessity has to be done in-home, if the scooter is difficult to navigate the home and the patient requires to have a motorized wheelchair because we're referring to in-home use, that is a reason where you can eliminate a scooter, say the scooter is not appropriate for my patient because they require in their home, and their home has X amount of hallways. This is how wide it is. It's too impossible to turn around like that. Even making K-turns, you have to go into their bedrooms, turning around, get back around. It can get pretty complex. If the patient is unable to navigate their home effectively and functionally with a scooter, they will qualify for a motorized wheelchair.